Awesome. So that's working. Great technology. So I want to give a few minutes for people to arrive. So why don't we just quickly go around, if you'd be willing to just say your name, where are you from, and where are you right now? And maybe just one word that comes up for you when you think of conflict resolution and talking difficult conversations. Just one word. What comes up for you when you think of those really sensitive, difficult conversations? So I'm Alper. I'm originally from Turkey. I was year 18 at Pearson, and I'm in Vancouver, Canada. And the word that comes up for me is excitement. I like those conversations. So just feel free to unmute yourself and come on in.
Jaylene, I'm in Winnipeg, currently in my basement. And the word that comes up for me is stress.
Stress, okay. Wonderful. Very understandable.
I'm Gabi. I'm in Mexico City, and for me, it comes anger sometimes.
I really appreciate the honesty. I think it's so important to be very honest. Yes. Who is next?
Hi, I'm Alex from the Netherlands.
Hi.
Oh, sorry.
Hi, Alex. Go ahead.
Hi. Nice to see you all and nice to join this session. The word that comes up for me is creativity.
Creativity, love it. So do you see the diversity? This is good that there's a diversity, yes. Who's next?
Constance from Brazil, year 16.
Hi.
And I guess the word is frustration.
Frustration, I appreciate it.
Perfect.
I hear that, yes, indeed.
Okay.
Who's next? Unfortunately, breaking up. If you'd be willing to mute yourself if you're not actively sharing, that'd be great. But who wants to share next? Just a little introduction and one word around communication.
Hi, Alper. I'm Muge.
Oh, go ahead.
Muge!
How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here.
Yes.
So do you want to say one word that comes up for you around conflict resolution and communication?
I feel sick right now.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're breaking up, so we're missing. Feel free to just write in the chat. Feel free to do a little introduction in the chat, just one word or anything really you want to say around communication, conflict resolution. This is great. Anybody else that wants to unmute and just say hello to the group?
Hi, everybody. It's Monica, originally from Costa Rica and Spain, now in Connecticut. And one word that comes to mind is compromise. Thank you.
Compromise, interesting word. Yes, I'd love to talk about that more. Compromise is an interesting word. Anybody else? Let's say hello. Hi.
Kathy Borderson.
Hi.
From the Philippines. I'm currently in New Hampshire, and one word that comes to mind when thinking of conflict resolution is that it's relevant.
Relevant, isn't it ever so, especially right now. There's so much going on this beautiful planet that needs conflict resolution. Yes. Who else wants to say hello and just one word? Kira.
Kira Armstrong from Berkeley, California, year 18, and opportunity.
Opportunity, love it. Wonderful. Anybody else that wants to say, oh, Debbie, hi.
Hi, Alper. Wow, long time no see.
No.
I'm Debbie from year 19 from Malaysia. And when I think about conflict resolution, I think of opportunity for changes.
Okay, opportunity, indeed, very much.
Changes.
Indeed. I'm loving some of the things that are being written in the chat. There's fear. There's a feeling of maybe feeling unequipped. Can I even handle this? Do I even know how to, navigate those rough waters? Sometimes I think we choose not to even engage because we're just too scared. We're thinking we're going to create a bigger mess. Sometimes we choose not to do anything about it, which I don't think is very effective, by the way. But anybody else wants to say hello?
Hello,
Hi,
Alper.
Will.
Hi.
Sorry, after you, Kirti.
Yeah, I can hear you, Yazan. Please go ahead.
Okay. Hi, I'm Yazan from year 19 Jordan. I am currently based in Oxford for me, I guess it's tension.
Tension, indeed. Yes, I'm sure we can relate to that. Okay, anybody else that wants to say hello?
Hi, Alper. Oh,
Originally from the Philippines, currently in New York. The word that comes to mind when I think about conflict resolution is intense.
Intense. Okay. Hi, Alyssa. Hi. Hello.
Hi, Alper. Kirti here, year
Hi,
17. So we are actually practically city mates.
We
Although
are.
we don't see each other very much. Yeah, so I'm based in Vancouver, from Sri Lanka originally. And for me, yeah, a huge opportunity for learning. I think we all, we're not experts like you are in this space. No matter what you study and learn, technically, this is a very challenging area, I find, and I think there's a lot to learn. The one word I would say is probably fear and tension. Yeah, those are the kind of terms that come to mind when I think about conflict resolution. So thank you for hosting the session.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much. So great to have you all here. This is wonderful. So great turnout. This is great. So anybody else wants to say a quick hello before I jump in?
Sure. Itai, originally from Israel, currently living in San Francisco. And for me, conflict resolution is just another form of game theory. So it's basically playing between, two players that each want to maximize their gains, but still get to some sort of a solution or not. And we use a lot of conflict resolution in developing products and product management. So it's just another form of negotiation that we do every day.
Absolutely. All aspects of life, from the moment we wake
I'm just going to say something politically correct. Arita, you crack me up. If I'm completely honest, the first word that came to my mind when I hear conflict resolution is Israel. But I didn't want to say that.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. That's so relevant. It is very relevant.
Well, you want to hear something even funnier? The two guys who got the Nobel Prize for game theory are from my city, from Haifa.
Okay.
But the situation in Israel has not been solved because of that. So, they actually came up with game theory. It just not utilized that well locally.
That's right. Okay, so thank you so much, everybody. Please feel free to write in the chat to continue the dialogue, but I think I should get started. We don't have a lot of time. And this is really not really intended for as an in-depth training. I mean, normally we would need a lot more time if we really wanted to, to learn this model. But I really want to share a little bit about my journey. I want to give you a little bit of a taste and just to stimulate more conversation. And maybe we can talk about more things we could do after the reunion. I'm very, very interested in an idea to have an ongoing group that's interested in communication and being like a group that facilitates communication and facilitates conflict resolution. So I just want to say a little bit about my own journey. I came to Pearson very excited about life, and I was studying sciences, and my dream was to become an engineer. I was a good student, and I thought that's what I'm going to do with my life. And Pearson, introduced a bug, I think, into my system, this bug about human beings and personal growth and cultural understanding. So much that my interest in science, I realized, wasn't as exciting as wanting to work with human beings, wanting to understand human beings. So I started studying electrical engineering after Pearson for 2 years. But I was also so interested in personal growth and self-exploration that my studies weren't nearly as meaningful or exciting as my own kind of personal life. So I went through an early life, midlife crisis, I always say, and I decided to change my life. I said, okay, I don't want to study science. I need something more social. I want to help people. I want to understand myself more. I want something that's more holistic. So that started me on a big journey of self-exploration. and trying to find a deeper sense of meaning in my life. And it was very exciting at first to give up this, wonderful possible life of being an engineer. But then I didn't know what to do with myself. I didn't know what to study next. I didn't know how to make a living. And I didn't know how to find meaning in my life. So I was interested in meditation. I was interested in yoga. I studied in massage. I took a whole course on shiatsu therapy. I was interested in healing. I wanted to help people, but I couldn't figure out what is going to be my grounded career. And I was very interested in counseling and emotions and all of that. So one day somebody gave me some DVDs based on the nonviolent communication model. And I remember thinking, oh, yet another thing, yet one of those other personal growth ideas that I'm interested in, but I've already seen so many of them, right? And I didn't pick it up right away. And one evening I had nothing better to do. And I said, okay, those DVDs, I'm going to watch those. By the way, I'll give you the link for that on the Facebook group, and we'll share it with you in other mediums as well. It's a 3-hour recording of Marshall Rosenberg in San Francisco. So that's how I got introduced to this model. So I put on the DVDs that night and I was blown away. I was blown away. I watched the full 3 hours. I think I really needed that. And it was a very personal thing for me. It wasn't about career. It wasn't about profession. It was about me in my life feeling like this guy really understands me. This guy. I'm going to mute Miguel's phone. Okay. So I was really amazed because I felt like he really understands, but I really went into trouble. As human beings, we went into trouble. Even with the best of intentions, we went to Pearson College, of anybody, we have experience, but do you always have good results in conflict resolution? Do you always understand all people? I wasn't, I was still struggling. I was suffering and I didn't know what to do with my life and my relationships many times. And Marshall Rosenberg was really talking about that in a very direct way. So I felt like, oh, he gets me. He understands my human condition. So that was nice. But then also he had some solutions. He had some suggestions. It was really life-changing for me. So much that it inspired me to become a psychotherapist. So, this is my testimonial of this model, that it was so meaningful for me that it gave me a career direction as well, because I was like, okay, we can really make a difference in the world. And I want to learn more about psychology. I want to learn more about this, and I really want to help people. So it literally inspired me to become a psychotherapist. So I am a psychotherapist. I work as a psychotherapist. I work at Vancouver Community College in Vancouver, and I also have a private practice. And I am also very involved in this model called nonviolent communication. It's also known as compassionate communication. I do a lot of trainings, workshops, practice groups. So it's still a big part of my life. Just out of curiosity, who is at all familiar with this model? It's also called NVC for short. Maybe let's see a show of hands. Have you ever heard of it? Have you done any training? Okay, a few people have heard of it. That's great. That's wonderful. So Emilia just joined us. Welcome, Emilia. So I want to really thank Emilia because she really inspired me to do this session, and she's here to support me, and we're hoping to do some role plays. Hi, Emilia.
I'm really sorry I'm late. I forgot the babysitter didn't have a car, and sorry.
No problem. Emilia, I think I'm going to ask you too. When you think of conflict resolution, what is the first word that comes to your mind? We just went around and everybody say words.
Conflict resolution, it almost feels like a bit after the fact, like there's been a huge big explosion of like gasoline or something, and people are trying to like pull everyone back down to earth and make things peaceful again. But I think that might be a bit wrong, because I think it's more like an everyday thing, like a habitual way of comporting yourself in a daily life, so things don't get to that point. Yeah,
that's right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Or also kind of like unpicking problems that have like grown tentacles and become enormous, like 30-year-old monsters. Like today I was just talking to a friend, he's got a marriage crisis, and he's now finally, they're both learning to speak their needs. And so now they're sort of like retracing their steps to figure out how they got there in the first place. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. So I really appreciate what you just said, Amelia, because one thing I want to emphasize is communication is not just about conflict resolution, and it's not just about, big issues like Israel and Palestine. I really believe this is about all of our lives, right? It's about your personal relationships, about your relationship with your children. It's about your relationship with your partner. It's not just about these political issues. I think we need to look at it on all levels. And I love this model because it's relevant at all those levels. And I believe that to really live this, I really believe that I have to apply it to my personal life. If I don't use it in my own personal life, I can't just show up and say, now I'm going to do conflict resolution. So how do we integrate these ideas and principles, and how do we live them? And the other thing I want to really emphasize today, it's not just about how we communicate to other people, it's also about how do we communicate to our own self. How do you communicate with yourself? Are you always kind? Are you always compassionate? Do you tolerate the conflicting aspects of yourself? And so again, it's so important, how we relate to ourselves, our inner relationship, I think is the foundation of our communication to the outside world. So I love this model because I find that it's applicable at all these levels. And before I jump in further, I just also want to say that this is just one method. There's so many different ways, in terms of going about conflict resolution. This is not the only way. This is not necessarily the best way. This is a way that I find really helpful, but I think we really need to acknowledge many different ways. So I'm going to actually request that please write in the chat, do you have other techniques and modalities that you're using in your life and that you would recommend? Because there's so many different ways of going about this. So, I'm not presenting this as the only solution as the right way. This is one of the ways that I find is very, very, very helpful. And one of the reasons why I love this model is because I find it's actually really fun because we get to use puppets teaching this. I get to play with puppets for my professional work. How cool is that? So if you want to check out the videos that I'm sharing with Marshall Rosenberg, you'll see how he uses the puppets. And I think it's so endearing, kids love it, but I think adults love it even more. And I think we kind of need this as we talk about these tense issues, deep topics. Like, it's so disarming and just so opening up when we see these, so these are going to be these animals that will communicate. So it's super fun. So these are the two characters we have in compassionate communication. So of course, this guy is giraffe, and this guy is jackal. And we're using them as metaphors, right? They're metaphors as two different paradigms of communication. So which one do you think will represent the more effective, more positive and compassionate communication? Which one will represent the more disconnected, ineffective, alienating? So make a wild guess. Feel free to unmute yourself or just write in the chat.
The giraffe seems so zen.
That's right. There's something about giraffes, right? And again, we're not doing this to hate on the jackals, just for education.
No, I'm more like a jackal.
We're not here to judge the jackals, but there's just a fun little tool to talk about that. Yes, there really is two, if you generalize, two different kinds of communication, and it's good for educational purposes. So we'll start with the jackal. Jackal representing the type of communication that doesn't help, the type of communication that promotes conflict, that creates a big mess. Sometimes we call the jackal language compassion killer, connection killer. It's a way of communicating that alienates us, that makes things even worse. So I would love to just ask you for a moment, what type of communication do you think jackal communication would represent? Just for fun. Oh, there we go. We have Jacob's dog there. So feel free to unmute yourself or write in the chat. What do you think are the types of communication that's not helpful? On any aggressive, right? Anything about aggression, clearly anything about violence. This is
intolerance.
Intolerance, absolutely.
Confrontational.
Confrontational. I'm seeing in the chat, not listening, right? Lacking listening. I mean, if I'm the jackal type, You know, I know what's right. I don't need to listen to you. You know, I don't have time to listen to you. You should do it my way because I know what's right. You know, I mean, there's this not willingness to listen. What else?
Condescending.
Condescending. Yeah. So there's just like an energy, right? You know, we can call this certain negativity. So one really amazing thing Marshall used to say, he's not alive anymore, he's the founder of this model. He used to say that to speak jackal or giraffe, you don't even need to open your mouth. Maybe you're not saying anything, right? It's through your eyes. It's the look that you have in your eyes. You're either in the jackal mode or you're in the giraffe. Do you know what I'm talking about? You enter a room and nobody's saying anything, and just the expression on people's faces, do you get a good vibe from them, or are you already getting like a negative vibe and you're already like in the defense? You're going, whoa, I don't feel safe here. So it's that vibe, it's that energy. What else for jackal?
Mistrust.
Mistrust, yes, exactly. It's not about connecting. It's a very divisive. It's a very kind of like a very survival oriented. It's almost like I'm fighting for my life. I don't trust you. I feel like I have to fight with you. I'm not even thinking maybe we can make peace here. I'm trying to just survive in a very primitive way, and that's not very effective most of the time. What else? Yeah. So the same person can move from giraffe to jackal in the same conversation. Isn't that tragic? And it happens too often. It probably happens to people like us who are dedicated to a life of peace, you know, who have a lot of experience, but I'm sure sometimes we lose it. Sometimes we get triggered. Sometimes we lose our patience, or we don't know. We don't know what to do next. And it's so easy to go back to the jackal. So just to kind of summarize the jackal so far, you know, the negativity is there. All the different spectrum of violence is there. It could be like explicit violence, or it could be emotional violence. The one thing I really want to emphasize is anything that is judgmental, anything that has the flavor of judgment and blame is actually, I would say, one of the hallmarks of jackal language. It's a language based on judgments. You know, things like you're wrong, you're bad, you're inappropriate, you know, you're a loser, you're a, you know, you are an abuser. Anytime we indicate that somebody is wrong, we put a label, we put a judgment on them, we're entering into the realm of jackal language. Anytime we even indicate that somebody is wrong, we're actually starting to go into the jackal realm. So judgments. Anytime we're pointing the finger, right? This is your fault. We need to talk about what's going on here. And what's going on, the problem about this pandemic is you. What you guys are doing, it's your group. Or, you know, the problem about this conflict is you guys are not cooperating. So just for fun, you know, if you've never done this, I love this, you know, just shake your finger for a moment and just imagine that you're blaming the person you're upset with. It's all your fault. And when you're pointing the finger, just realize that you got 3 fingers pointing back at you. Just blaming business is not very helpful. So blaming is in the realm of ineffective communication. Any kind of communication that includes force and demanding and threatening. So, you know, if you don't do, you know, as I'm wanting you to do, you're going to be in trouble. If you don't do what I want, you know, I'm going to punish you. You know, you're going to have to pay a price. So this kind of threatening language or demanding language or bossing kind of language is going to be the realm of jackal. So clearly it's a very self-centered way to go about life and communication. And it's about me, it's about what I want, it's about my needs. So clearly it's very self-centered and selfish. And just for fun, you know, you can imagine, you know, jackal being a lot shorter than a giraffe. So it's very short-sighted. You can never see the bigger picture. Like, you know, I want this, but I'm not even clear if it's really good for everybody else. It's not a group consciousness. It's a very, you know, self-centered consciousness, very short-sighted. Clearly, it's very reactive, right? You know, something happens and I just react. Why are you looking at me? You know, why are you smiling, Annalisa? You're smiling. I don't know why you're smiling. I think you're judging me right now. It's just so quick to, to get fired up. It's not mindful. It's not calm. Or maybe, Jackal is too quick to open the mouth, and then things come out of your mouth and you later regret. Maybe it wasn't time yet to share, right? Maybe you needed to sleep over that. So it's not mindful. It's too impulsive. What else?
Alper?
Yes.
I was just thinking while you were saying that, the whole exercise about blaming someone, I was thinking of a person just now, and I was like, after listening to you, I'm like, you're being a jackal. But if I do that, then am I not being a jackal myself?
Oh, Annalisa, you are an advanced giraffe. To see that is an incredible amount of self-awareness. By the way, that took me years to come to that level. I mean, I fell in love with this model. I jumped into it. I was learning it. I was applying it into my life. Actually, I'll share this story because it's a very life-changing moment. So I was already involved with this model for a few years. I was even running practice groups in Vancouver, Canada, based on this model. And I met Marshall Rosenberg, and I had an incredible connection with Marshall Rosenberg, so much that he gave me a scholarship to go to Switzerland to attend their most advanced training. It's a 9-day international intensive. I mean, it was just so incredible opportunity. It was such an honor to be with people from all around the world on a Swiss, mountain. It was amazing. And I was so eager, right? Because I'm like, I've been practicing this. I'm a believer. So I arrived and I was so shocked and so disappointed that I felt like a lot of people in the group, and these are supposed to be advanced practitioners, they weren't really using draft. I was hearing people using judgmental language and being jackal and complaining about this and that. I was like, they're being jackals. How come they're being jackals at this advanced training? They shouldn't be jackals. They're being jackals. And I was really stressed out. I wasn't like relaxing enough to enjoy the training. And I didn't realize what was happening until I think the second day, thank God, Marshall said something in the morning session, which comes to what you just shared, Annalisa. He said, it takes a jackal to see a jackal. He says, if you're a giraffe, there are no jackals in the world. He says, the moment you're labeling even somebody as a jackal, you're in that moment, you're being a jackal. It takes a jackal to see. He said, there's only giraffes, and some of the giraffes have communication problems. They have some communication issues. They communicate in a way that's not very helpful, but they're just giraffes with some, communication issues. So from that moment, I realized, oh my God, I'm also not using this model. I'm also judging them. And the moment I started to relax, my whole experience changed. I could actually relate to people. I could try to understand. Maybe they're not, that's the stage that they're at. So very good point. So how do you feel when somebody talks to you in jackal language, either in your personal life or in a political issue about Israel and Palestine, around the pandemic? You're dealing with somebody and they're giving you the jackal language. How does that make you feel when you have to, communicate with somebody who's giving you this kind of language?
I have a little question out there. Do we talk about conflict resolution or about ways of communication? Because so far, I don't think we actually mentioned the conflict. We mentioned power struggle or bad way of communication, but what is the conflict about? Like Israel-Palestine, there's a conflict about a piece of land.
That's right.
But when you have a conflict with your kids, is that about who wears the pants here? I mean, what is the conflict really? Because I think that makes a big difference. There are people who just behave and communicate like bullies, even if there's no conflict. they just, that's their way of treating life. But if there is a real conflict and a real attempt to get to a resolution, then I think that we can all be both jackals and giraffes. It really depends on what the strategy and how important the outcome is for us. So my question is, where is the conflict in what you're describing?
That's right. Thank you so much, Ty. I appreciate the question. And again, there's different ways of going about conflict resolution. So in some strategies, like we may just want to jump in and talk about the strategies to deal with the conflict. This model, I think, has a much bigger perspective. So I'm not just talking about conflict. I am talking about communication. And I'm talking about the consciousness that lives inside of us. Because this model says that to resolve conflict, we really need to look at how I live my life. What are my assumptions? How do I deal with my day-to-day communication? What are my communication skills? And the more we're grounded in that, like, I guess, one way of saying is, am I mostly living in the jackal paradigm or the trap paradigm? And that's a day-to-day practice, not just about, when there's conflict. Actually, ideally, I would say we need to practice this in our day-to-day life so we can use our inner resources when there's conflict. So we'll come to conflict more explicitly in a second, but this is, I would say, much bigger than that. This is about, how do you live your life? This is about, somebody saying it's a state of mind. It's about your assumptions. It's about the paradigm. Do you normally live in the jackal paradigm, or we're going to look at the giraffe paradigm? But we'll look at more specific strategies in a second in time.
Understood.
Okay, but again, I just want to ask for a second, how does it feel to deal with a jackal in the middle of a conflict or in day-to-day life? Is it fun? Do you like it? Does it make you want to communicate with them further when somebody is really coming at you? Does it want to make you cooperate? Does it want to make you maybe even, compromise? Does it make you feel compassionate when somebody's coming at you full force with trap? What happens to your kindness? What happens to your international understanding, ideals? My guess is, we lose that so easily. It drains your energy. It creates conflict. It creates a lot of unsafety. I think, we start to close up, right? We start to guard up. It's like, and also it creates violence. If somebody's judging me, I may say, how dare you talking to me like that? I'm not an idiot. You're an idiot. It begets more and more of that energy, right? So sometimes I say in my trainings, I said, there's two banks in town. There's the Jackal Bank and there's the Giraffe Bank. Where do you want to invest? Because wherever you invest, there's interest. The more you give out jackal communication in your life, it comes back to you, but interest multiplies. But the more you invest in giraffe, and sometimes it's one conversation, and sometimes it takes a while. Maybe we're not going to resolve the conflict today, but are you investing in the giraffe intention? Because it will come back to you, whereas the jackal definitely comes back. So one fun example Marshall gives is he used to say, when he would be driving in the highway, right? He says, before he came up with this model, he says, I'll be driving my car and I don't like the person in front of me, the way that they're driving, I'm really frustrated, I'm angry, road rage. So what do we do? When you're not happy in traffic, what do most people do? I don't know, maybe you honk, maybe you drive more aggressively. He says, he says that he would just stick his head out the window and he would swear. And it was like, you idiot driver, you shouldn't be allowed,
Well, if it's on the 405 in LA, it's probably going to get shot. So it really depends where it's happening.
That's right. There's just flavors and there's a spectrum of how much of this comes out. But I think it lives in every one of us, right? Especially when we're stressed out, especially when we're really, upset and triggered, the jackal is more likely to come out. Unfortunately, we say those kinds of things when we're really hurting the most. And when we really want the most cooperation, it's likely that we're going to use some of these ways of communicating that's not helpful. So Marshall would say, if jackal language really worked, if this was a really effective way to communicate, right? So when he screams at the other driver and swears at the other driver should say something like this. Should say something like, oh, sir, thank you so much for calling me an idiot. I totally understand why you would call me an idiot. And by the way, I confess I am an idiot. Thank you so much for bringing this fact to my awareness. I admit I'm an idiot, and I admit I'm driving in a horrible way. And now that you brought this to my attention, I promise I will change. Thank you so much for this conversation, and you really made my day, and I will be a better driver from now on. Have you ever seen something like that happen? when we use the jackal mode, does it really help? In most cases, it doesn't, right? The chances are the other person may drive a bit more aggressively. So unfortunately, jackal doesn't tend to solve our problems. It tends to create more problems. And it almost tends to guarantee that you're not going to get what you really want. So even if you want something, even if you want the other person to change, using jackal is almost guaranteeing that you're not going to get what you were hoping for, which is tragic. And also it almost guarantees that the situation is about to get worse. The thing that you weren't happy about is about, how tragic is that? And again, how common that we use this, right? In day-to-day life, why don't you pick up your socks from the floor? Like, don't you know how hard I work as your daddy? Why don't you help me more? If you were a good friend, you would call me more. It's so easy. We try to express ourselves, and unfortunately, it's so easy to go into the jackal. Kirti.
Yeah, Alper, correct me if I'm wrong, but I was just thinking, in addition to the giraffe and the jackal, I wonder if there's a third state, which might be the absence of the giraffe or the jackal. What if you completely check out and you're not participating in either form in the resolution? So is that like something to also be aware of?
I appreciate that, and I mean, maybe we could define it that way, but I think normally in this model we would still put that under the jackal category. Like sometimes just not saying anything, or just avoiding, or refusing to communicate, or just saying, I don't care about the problems of the world, it doesn't affect me. I would still put that as an ineffective type of communication. So if I'm not part of the solution, I'm in the jackal camp. I think that's what I would say. Monica. I see your hand.
Thank you. I'm wondering if when you are being a jackal, let's say when I'm being a jackal, is there, so there's probably a reason why people are jackals and giraffes, right? And is there some kind of like benefit, like venting, like when you're name calling, right? Where you might say, well, I'm not solving the problem in the long run, but at least in the short run, I'm letting it all out. And so I'm not justifying, I'm just trying to think about the human condition and, why we are jackals and whether it's ever justified. Thank you.
I love it. Thank you so much. Really good point. So again, in the longer training, we go really in depth on all these subtleties, and there's a lot of questions will come up today, and I'll do my best. But yeah, so again, we're not here to judge the jackal, right? We're not here to demonize the jackal. And guess what? So in our practice group, so one way to really learn this, to integrate this, is we have something called a practice group where people really want to, do this, week after week. So sometimes we have a jackal circle just to vent out before we go to the solution, before we become, so sometimes it's really fun. We say, okay, what is the topic? The topic is pandemic. Give us your jackal, even exaggerated. Those idiots that don't wear masks, those, sheeps that, believe the governments. Yes, it's actually very therapeutic. It is very therapeutic to take it out. And also it really increases our self-awareness. So no, we're not trying to censor the jackal. We're definitely not trying to suppress it. In fact, the jackal is really important. The jackal is trying to give a very important message. So the jackal is not without meaning or purpose. It's trying to give a message, but it's coming out in a very ineffective way. But you don't want to cut out the jackal. You want to actually hear your own jackal. You want to really give some inner space to your jackal and understand your jackal. And then you may choose to translate that. So this is about translating. So the jackal is a very beautiful message, but if I say it in the jackal mode, it doesn't really help. But I need to hear it. I need to understand it. I need to honor it. I need to maybe enjoy it, vent it out. And then hopefully when I choose to deal with a real human being in my life, I may say, okay, this is what's really going on for me. This is what's important for me. And I really want to do it in the draft because I care too much about myself. I don't want to suffer. I know where this leads. I know the big price tag that comes with this. So I don't want to do that. I care about myself. I care about life. I mean, I sometimes say, even for selfish reasons, like if you just want to get what you want in life, I would say you have better chances if you use draft. Even for very, very selfish reasons. You have a better chance of getting what you really want and getting people to cooperate with you if you use the giraffe. So even for selfish reasons, the giraffe is relevant. But yeah, so we're not trying to censor the jackal, just the opposite. It's so fun in our practice group where we just enjoy the jackal.
I have a question. What about social context and power context? So not, I would say when there is no equality or some minutia like who drives faster on the road, but real issues, and also a cultural approach, and also a lot on stake. Sometimes to be taken as weak as the giraffe gets eaten. So what do you think about that?
Oh, I love it, Itai. And again, I wish we have so much time that we could go so deeply, and we could, if we had time and space. I'm just giving you some of the basic concepts right now. But I mean, one thing I want to address right away is the concept that, yeah, the giraffe may come across as weak or kind of like nice, almost like saintly. Like, do you mean I have to be like a saint? Always have to be nice? And the answer is absolutely no. In fact, in this model, we say giraffes are not nice. Actually, most of the problems in the world are because of nice people. The nice people who don't want to do anything about anything, who don't feel their feelings, who are not really authentic. So I would say giraffe is very authentic and it's incredibly honest. So as a giraffe, I'm not putting a smile on my face and pretending everything is fine. I'm not hiding my feelings, just the opposite. So one of the qualities of the giraffe is honesty. But here's the difference. Here's the jackal definition of honesty. So I'm going to be honest with you. My honesty is, I think you're an idiot. I'm being honest. So, it's kind of like honesty about my thoughts and my judgments about you. Whereas the giraffe honesty may mean, I really want to be honest in this situation, in this meeting. I'm feeling really scared. I'm feeling really
probably also
right?
thinking that you're an idiot. I'm just behaving differently.
Sorry, say that again?
The giraffe probably also thinks that the jackal is an idiot, but just not expressing it.
Oh, absolutely. Again, maybe the jackal impulse is there in all of us. So, these are both in all of us, right? But then as a giraffe, I'm kind of processing that, and I'll show you guys how to do that. I'll at least give you a taste of it today. But yeah, there's nothing wrong to have, maybe my first impulse is I want to hit the person on the head, that's the first thing that I want to do. But then, I can understand that. Why do I want to hit them? What's going on for me? Maybe one concept to highlight right now is, one way to think about this whole thing is, one way to think about communication is, what's alive inside of me right now and what's alive inside of you, and how can we get clear about that, and how can we communicate that? How can I express what's really going on inside of me in a way that doesn't come across judgment and blame? And how can I hear what's really going on inside of you? So the concept is what's alive. To understand what's alive, I need to be honest. I need to have self-awareness. I need to be honest that, yes, I do want to hit this person on the head. But then, I go deeper with that. Okay, so let's now switch over to giraffe, because thank God, there is another paradigm. And you all know this. You've seen this in your life. You've seen this at Pearson College. We probably have that stronger than most of the general population, because we've dedicated our lives. We live with these values. So what do you think the giraffe will represent in terms of very practical communication skills, attitudes, assumptions? What is the giraffe paradigm? And we looked at the jackal. What would be the giraffe instead? And again, we're just thinking about effective communication. We're talking about effective conflict resolution. What are some of those key principles or skills? Empathy, exactly, right? So the jackal didn't even care about listening. Why do I even listen to you? I know what's right. You should do whatever. Whereas giraffe I may have an opinion. Again, as a giraffe, I'm not just nice. I may have a strong opinion. I may even express my opinion, but I may still say, but I really want to hear, how do you see it from your perspective? Doesn't mean I'm going to agree with you, but I want to hear you. I want to give a chance. I'm curious. So not as primal, not as impulsive. So, this whole thing about mindfulness, right? So, we're so blessed these days. Mindfulness, self-regulation, being able to ground yourself, being able to come from that intentional centered place. So when the giraffe is walking so gracefully and calmly, it really embodies that. It's very helpful. Curiosity, absolutely. I want to know, I want to understand. I have my opinions, but I'm so curious. How could you see it so differently? It's hard for me to believe that you see it differently, but would you be willing to tell me how you see it? So how did you come to that conclusion? I want to know. So inquisitive. Yes, again, nice is different from kind. So again, the other thing is, the giraffes are more, maybe it's a symbol of assertive communication. Think about assertive. So you may be very strong in your communication. You may really advocate for what you believe in. You may have a loud voice, but you could still be in the giraffe mode. You could still be using, so you don't have to be just polite and weak. You can be a very strong, force in the world. Now, the one key thing that we said for jackals is judgment, right? So the giraffe is going to be the opposite of that. So what is the opposite of judgment or judgmental language? The opposite is, is non-judgment. So that's one of the key qualities of giraffe and giraffe way of communicating. How can I communicate in a way that is non-judgmental, essentially? It's not easy. Because in the middle of a conflict, I think you're wrong. I think you're an idiot. I think it's your fault. I think you're the one who should change. But in giraffe, I don't want to say those words. So, I'll show you a little bit today what is a way to actually steer away from judgment and to express what I need to express in a non-judgmental way. So that's one of the key things. I'm not catching up with all of the discussions, but I see some great discussions happening in the chat, so that's wonderful. Emilia, feel free to jump in if you want me to address anything in the chat, because I'm not able to keep up as I'm talking. So feel free to let me know if there's something that you want to highlight from the chat.
No, I'm just trying to understand a bit better what Itai was trying to drive at, because it feels like there's this fear of being taken as being weak. And then that made me think about a story that somebody called Jack Cornfield, who's like the ultra nice, compassionate Buddhist guy. I think he's one of these people that kind of popularized Buddhist ethics in the West. But he got into a problem with his builder, because his builder wasn't doing the job right, and Jack was getting more and more and more annoyed, but he's a Buddhist, so he couldn't express it. So he's like speaking in a really soft voice, really kindly and nicely, and the builder didn't get it. And so finally he figured out he had to speak builder language. And so he yelled at the builder, and then the builder's like, now I got it. And he put the roof on the house. And it's like, how would that parse out in terms of jackals and giraffes? Was Jack having a problem because he was too giraffe, or was he actually not giraffe enough because he wasn't fully understanding until late in the day the language of the builder?
Yeah, no, I love that. The thing is, again, as a giraffe, you want to match the emotions that you're feeling. So you want to be congruent, right? If you're angry and if you say, I just wanted to talk about something, you're not even being congruent. So you're not going to be, so it's all about authenticity. And also you may need to match the emotions of the person that you're, so here's the thing, this always is, interesting to say. As a giraffe, you can scream. As a giraffe, you can be very angry. There's nothing wrong. We call it screaming in giraffe. Sometimes you need to scream. I mean, if somebody is stepping on your toe and you're in pain, you're not going to say, oh, I have some feelings right now. You're probably going to go, oh, I'm in pain. Get off my foot. So we can even scream. But then again, you can scream in jackal. So you can say to somebody, I hate you. You're the most horrible person that ever lived. You should die. Go to hell. You're not even a human being. So that's jackal screaming. Giraffe screaming would be something like this. I'm in a lot of pain right now. I don't feel like I'm being heard right now. I don't feel visible right now. And this is unbearable. I'm just really overwhelmed. I'm really angry. I have so much pain. I really want some equality and respect for everybody involved here. So I am expressing myself. So again, maybe let's say giraffe can be very passionate, and sometimes I think we need to. So you can, again, you can really express what's inside of you, but you're not burning your bridges. You're not, destroying a relationship maybe that took years, right? It's so easy to, say a few words, then you just burnt your bridges. So it's a lot about emotional intelligence, but emotions are welcome. So the whole range of, actually, that's I think one of the things that makes communication really effective is if we can really use and leverage our emotions and be really authentic about our emotions. So very cool. Maybe the other thing to really emphasize here is, of course, Jackal, you can think of like a win-lose paradigm. I want what I want, but I don't care if you lose. Whereas giraffe, of course, we're thinking about how can we find the solution that works for everybody. I want to win. As a giraffe, I'm not like, it's not that I don't care about my feelings and needs. No, I really care. So giraffe also includes a lot of self-respect. Right. So again, I'm not just a martyr. I'm not just a saint. No, I really care about me. I want what I want, and also to be very clear about what I feel and what I want. But at the same time, I don't want to get what I want at your cost. I want to find a solution that your needs can be met too. Because I know if I get my needs at your cost, I'm going to have to pay a price. There's going to be a war in a few years. You're going to rebel against me. It's going to come up. So so we can get our needs met through the Jackal way sometimes. How often we see that in the world politics, right? Sometimes the guys who are more Jackal seem to win the elections or seem to get certain things done, but at what cost?
It really reminds me of I think the guy's called Bennett. He came up with the expression of hypergame theory. So when the two sides are actually not playing the same game. The Jackal here is full of anxiety. He's irrational. He's aggressive. He's just looking at the immediate kind of maybe issue of respect or power, or I want to impose my thoughts or my position on you. And the giraffe can at first be seen as kind of weak and maybe too gentle or too accommodating, but actually the giraffe is playing the hyper game, because the giraffe knows what they actually want to get to.
That's right.
So
that's right.
So they can play the long game.
I love that.
And let that. I think the guy was called Bennett. He's one of the economists who actually came up with that, because you see that so much in boardrooms with CEOs and CMOs. You'll see the guy that would scream at everyone and would get super aggressive, especially to subordinates. And then you will see the one that looks like they're very accommodating, almost bowing down, but they're actually the one leading the game because they have a specific goal. While the other person is just, exploding because that's the way they do things and they miss the big story.
That's right. But you're going to burn out. You're going to lose the opportunity to form relationships. So I love what you're saying. So here's a fun little thing that I want to show you guys, because this came up quite a bit so far, right? So you're saying, what if the giraffe is weak? What if the giraffe, so who's this? This is the baby giraffe, right? So I heard in a lot of the comments that you're saying, like, what if this happens? So what is this? The baby giraffe is getting eaten up by a jackal. And there's a reality to that, right? So especially, if I really wanted to be a giraffe in the world, at the beginning, I'm just a baby giraffe, right? And of course, some situations will be challenging, but it's a growth process. It's a muscle, it's a skill that we develop. And of course, as a baby giraffe, I'm going to choose my challenges. I may not choose to communicate in certain situations. But, the stronger the giraffe gets, that's where the full empowerment is. Absolutely. And I love what Itai said. There's definitely playing the long game. Marshall used to say there's two reasons why people don't get what they want in their life. 2 reasons why people don't get what they really want in their life. It says number 1 reason is most people don't even know what they want. How are you going to get it? So again, giraffe is a lot about that self-awareness, that self-knowledge, that self-connection. It has to come from that grounded place of your self-awareness. And it says the number 2 reason why people don't get what they want is they never ask for it. They never even ask for it. So giraffe is a very active force in the world. It can be very powerful, it can be very active, and as a giraffe, I want to change the world. But I want to do it in a certain way. I want to do it with certain values. I want to do it as effective as possible. But I do care about myself, and and as a giraffe, I have a lot of power. It's not that I don't have power. I actually have lots of power. Marshall would say it's not a power over people, which would be kind of like a domination model, which would be the jackal paradigm. Giraffe has and wants to build power with people. It's a power by forming connections. It's a power by forming relationships. It's a power that forms trust. So it may take a little while, but if you really start to trust me, if you see that I'm consistent, if you see that I'm really trying to understand you, you may be willing to cooperate more. You may be willing to give me more. So it's an investment, and it does take time. Okay. So now, I mean, this is a good introduction, but I want to make it more practical. So what I would love to do is I'm going to ask all of you to choose an issue, a situation in your life for yourself that you want to work on, because I'm not going to guide you how to use giraffe if you choose to. So you can choose a very big topic. You can choose Israel and Palestine issue. You can choose something related to the pandemic. Or it could be about, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your children. What is an issue in your life? And it's related to people, right? That is less than wonderful. What's happening in your life that's less than wonderful? If you could make it better, if you could resolve the conflict, you would very much like that. What would you want to improve in your life? So I'm just going to give you a moment just to think about, just choose an example from your life, and I'll guide you step by step. How could you approach that conversation using giraffe? So again, it can be anybody. And maybe at the beginning stages, it's easier to not to choose the most traumatic example. Simply because as a baby giraffe, again, it may be too much to handle. It's not that you can't. I believe you can, but sometimes it's easier to choose a mid-range. But feel free to choose whatever you want to choose, and I'll support you. So think about it, and if you're willing to, if it's not too personal, write in the chat. Write in the chat what comes to your mind. So one thing to maybe emphasize is, again, many times we're really too hesitant to talk about these issues because we're feeling that we're going to make it worse, or it's so sensitive. It's like a minefield, right? So again, just choosing not to say anything would be a jackal strategy. Avoiding the elephant in the room, or being too afraid to talk, would be like, to me, would be like a more primitive self-protective strategy. It's not very effective in the long run. Whereas as a giraffe, one of the metaphors of giraffe is, of course, the height, so I can see the bigger picture, but it's also the long neck. So that I love that as a metaphor. So the giraffe is willing to stick the neck out, which means that I'm willing to communicate. I'm willing to get into tough waters. I'm willing to say the elephant in the room, and I'm willing to even tolerate some amount of conflict, because it's not going to be easy if I open a certain kind of topic. The other person may not be happy. The other person may be triggered. So as a giraffe, I'm not afraid of that. I actually welcome it. I mean, that would be one of the principles of good conflict resolution, is to not to be so afraid of the conflict, to learn how to tolerate, to learn how to accept it. It's going to be there. But also to have some trust that I know how to deal with it. Marshall used to say, say what you need to say, and if it creates a mess, then clean up your mess afterwards. Don't be afraid to create a mess. Actually, I went to a workshop with him one day. It was more about personal relationships, personal intimate relationships, and he was in Vancouver. And he starts the day, he didn't even say good morning or anything. He comes on stage. He was a very intense kind of a guy. He comes on stage, not smiling, this intensity. He says, what is the most important relationship in your life? Think about the most important intimate relationship in your life. Think about it right now. It's like, okay, whoa, who is it? And he says, what will be the most scary thing to say to this person that you would do anything to avoid, that you would never want to talk about? What would be the most dangerous thing to talk about? And then he says, guess what? If you really care about this person, you need to learn to talk about this. This is the most important thing to talk about. And he said, all day today, I'm gonna show you how to do that. I'm gonna encourage you and show you how to have the most difficult conversation with that person. Because if you care about them, you need to. So again, this giraffe has this incredible bravery and courage, but it comes with knowing that, it builds in time, right? The more I've used this model in my life, I was like, wow, this works. It builds that confidence, and then you're more willing to take a risk. You're more willing to take more sensitive issues. But okay, so I'm going to assume that everybody has something in mind. Yeah, Annalisa.
So I have a question going back to what I said earlier. If you're in a situation where you feel like the other person is being a jackal,
yes.
How do you actually address that? Because first of all, I think you have to not be a jackal. So you recognize, okay, there are all these reasons that cause you to think the other person's being a jackal, and so therefore you're reacting.
Sure.
But then how do you turn into a giraffe so that you can actually address the other person in a way that becomes productive, constructive, and a win-win for you both?
I love it. So I am going to show you that. So there's 4 steps in this model, and the steps and the structure of the model is designed for that. It's designed for you to find your giraffe. But I think before you even apply the technique, it's about intention, right? Like you may find that I'm really upset and I think he's being an idiot, and I think he's being like the worst jackal that have ever lived. He shouldn't even be allowed to live on this planet. And okay, and to acknowledge that, yes, I'm being a jackal, and it's okay to be a jackal, to empathize with yourself, to have some kindness. And it's like, of course, I'm so upset. And then to take a deep breath, maybe, and to say, okay, I want to address this, but I'm going to try my best to express it in the giraffe mode. So that's the turning point. It's just an inner decision, even just setting the intention. So right now, I'm going to ask all of us to set the intention with the person that you have in mind. Are you willing to make an intention to try to communicate them in the giraffe? And then are you willing to do your best to follow the steps? So let's jump in. So it is helpful if you choose somebody. I mean, you can choose anybody. You can choose Trump if you want. You can choose whoever you want. You can choose a group of people, those people who don't wear the mask. Maybe that's one of the things that's really upsetting me these days. It's totally okay. So the first step in using giraffe is, I'm going to ask you to write one sentence about, and imagine that you're already talking to the person. What is the issue that you're upset about? If you could just summarize the issue in one sentence. And again, you're already in the giraffe mode, remember, so we're not going to judge them. But how could you say what the issue is in one sentence to start? The first step is how you start. You need to give it some context. Like, what are we even talking about here? What's your concern? What are they doing? Like Annalisa said, what are they doing that makes you think that they're being a jackal? So again, I'm just going to give you a moment just to play with it. How would you even express that? And to not to write a book about it, right? Like sometimes we say, okay, well, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong, you're coming late, you never call me, it's too much. Can you choose one example, one issue at a time, right? What is one thing that they're doing that's making life less than wonderful for you? And how could you state that in a draft way? And I'll help you, don't worry if you don't get it right, it's okay. But how do you start the conversation? We need some way to start the conversation. What are they doing, or what are they not doing? That's normally what it boils down to. You take the car every Sunday, and I don't get to go to my tennis practice. You know, you borrowed money from me. You said you would return it in a month. I haven't heard from you yet. There's a mask mandate in this building, and I see you right now without wearing a mask. What are they doing? So if it's not too personal, I'm going to ask for a volunteer if you'd be willing to unmute yourself and just share your sentence. If it's too personal, please don't share. But if you're willing to, if you share, you're going to get extra coaching from me. So you don't have to get it right. You get extra benefits, and we all learn from it. So who would be willing to volunteer?
Well,
Emilia.
yeah, I hope it's not too abstract, but I was really struck by something that my friend with the marriage crisis said to me today. He was like, blah, 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 this happened, that happened. And then she asked me to tell her if I love her or not. She just said, well, Ben, do you love me? And he's like, well, I don't know, because it depends if you're asking me now or in 5 minutes. And anyway, love breaks down, the concept of love breaks down into at least 5 separate subzones. And it depends which one you want me to answer about. And I really resonated with that, because it seems like, you know, in this method, there's quite a lot of emphasis on saying how you feel about things. And there are a lot of barriers to saying what you feel and what you want, stating your needs. And a lot of that's like embarrassment. You feel your needs are unworthy or silly, whatever. But also, isn't it true that sometimes it's when you're asked in such a direct way, like, do you love me? It's hard to you know, you immediately feel under attack somehow, or there's some kind of script that you're supposed to follow, but maybe you don't know what that person's script is. Maybe for that person, what they're really asking is that you demonstrate that you love them by giving them a hug, or maybe it's by taking the car to be washed, or, you know, you just don't know. And it can feel like an attack, and this demand that you have feelings in the first place, because sometimes we might be dissociated or feeling cold or non-emotional. I'm sorry, maybe I'm bringing too many things in here. I'm just trying to it resonated with me what my friend said today, because I've often felt like that myself, that people demand that I express an emotion, which immediately makes me feel, well, if I express it now, it's not going to be authentic, is it? Because I'm doing it in reaction to your demand.
That's right.
So as a giraffe, how would I explain to that person, maybe I don't feel anything right now, but also that doesn't mean that I don't love you or I hate you. It just means that I'm not sure what you need me to do right now.
That's right.
Could I say that as a giraffe?
Yeah, I mean, a giraffe would love to have that conversation, but what I'm going to suggest is we wait for a moment, because that's like going at the end of the conversation. That's almost like jumping to the 4th step. Like when we ask for something, do you love me? I want you to tell me right now. You're already at the 4th step. You're already making a request from the other person. The first step is just stating, what is the issue? What is the issue? Just even, you know, so do you have an example like that, Emilia, where you can say, this is what's happening with this person?
Well, yeah, then in that format, it would be me saying, I need to know that I'm not feeling, this is me as a giraffe saying what I need, yeah?
So that would be the 3rd step. If you want to say your needs, you're already at your 3rd step. The 1st step is about the other person. What did the person do? You borrowed money from me, but you didn't return it. It's about talking about them.
You demanded that I prove to you that I love you, and that makes me feel uncomfortable.
Okay, wonderful. I like that. Do you mind if I ask who this person is?
Yeah, my mom, obviously.
Oh, your mom. Okay, I love it. So would you mind if we do a little role play about this?
Okay.
I'm your mom. Okay, now say that to her directly. Say, Mom, you know.
Mom, I was only a little kid and I had all these demands that you weren't going to be happy unless I proved to you that I love you. But maybe I wasn't feeling anything in that moment, or I didn't know how to, or something.
I demanded you to tell me that you love me as a mother. Isn't that my basic human right? Are you telling me that I'm a horrible mother? Are you saying that I'm like the most horrible person that ever lived? And you're so ungrateful after everything that I've done for you. This is just the most horrible day of my life. What just
Mom, you're
happened?
being too emotional.
That's
You're
right.
being too emotional.
Of course, we're exaggerating a bit. You have a wonderful intention to communicate with your mom, but unfortunately, she got activated even more, right? She got further into the jackal mode. She's really triggered, and it's so hard to have it. I mean, how often does this happen? We try to start the conversation, and the other person explodes. The other person gets extremely defensive. So I just wanted to demonstrate that even though you have a great intention, so this is a great example because I think the key word in there, I mean, I see your good intention, but I'm guessing your mom can hear even the word demand, that you said that you demanded me to say I love you, and heard it as a judgment. And now I'm defending myself against your judgment. So the moment the judgment comes into the airways, you're way more likely to have conflict escalate. And the other person doesn't want to talk to you anymore. They're in survival mode. They just want to fight back. And it's so unfortunate because you have a good intention. It's like, how do we not put gas over the fire? How do you not, trigger even more jackalness in the other person? The key thing is to try to not include even a resemblance of judgment. So how do we do that? So I would say, instead of saying, Mom, you demanded me to tell you that I love you, to make more like a direct quote. Mom, when I was, 6 years old, you asked me if I love you. And you would say, tell me right now, do you love me? That's a direct quote. You're not calling it a demand. You're not saying, Mom, you're horrible for doing that. You're not saying, Mom, that wasn't good communication. You're just actually making a direct factual observation. And if you could, so that's the trick to get out of judgment into saying what it is, by being very neutral about it and by being as kind of like a video camera. The video camera just recorded your mom saying, do you love me? And I really need you to tell me right now. And why are you not saying it? It's been 10 seconds already and you still haven't answered. Do you love me or not? I need to know it right now. So that's the observation. And if you could say it like that, Mom, this is what you said, I'm just improvising here right now, but there's a little bit more likelihood the other person will say, yes, I said that. Yes, and actually, I'm going to say it right now. Do you love me? So it doesn't solve the problem, but at least we can agree on the facts. And at least I'm not screaming at you yet. At least I can say, yes, I said that. And it's my right as a mother to say that. At least we're now talking about the topic. And, we haven't exploded yet. So that's the first step. The first step is we literally call the observation. How can you talk about your concern? How can you talk about your issue as factual, as neutral as possible, without including any indication of wrongness or judgment or blame? And just say, this is what happened. Again, you borrowed money from me. You said you would return it in a month. I haven't received any emails from you. I haven't received any phone calls from you. And I don't see any change in my bank account. That's the facts. I'm not saying what a horrible friend you are. I'm not saying how could you do this to me? I'm just reporting the facts. So, any questions about this step? Because it's really important. Because if you can't even start a conversation calm enough, we're not going to go anywhere. And again, you don't want to start the conversation with the indication that you're attacking, you're blaming, you're demonizing, you're dehumanizing. It's really important that you state your concern in a fairly neutral and factual way. And the test of that the other person should be able to say, yes, that's right, I'm not wearing a mask and I don't want to wear a mask and you're an idiot for wearing a mask. Okay, at least we agree on the fact that you're not wearing a mask.
Alper, maybe I just have something to share about this, or a quick question, because I think being able to do this requires already quite a bit of sort of distance to your own emotion, because it's actually really hard to make a completely factual statement about something that you yourself have a strong emotion about. And I find it quite challenging to, I mean, sometimes it works, but very often the other person still feels the emotion in what is supposed to be, you're trying to, be factual, but your emotion shows you still comes through, and the other person still takes it as a judgment.
Absolutely, yes.
So yeah, I was just wondering if you have more sort of advice for that, in order, how do you prepare for that first step
That's right.
properly?
So very, very good question, Alex. And I think what I'm hearing from you is, somebody may look like a giraffe, but really underneath there, the jackal is still there. They may say the right words, they may be even using the technique, but you can feel it from the look in their eyes. Or you may be feeling, you're trying to use it, but you're still judging them. So so it does take that first step. It does take that first step to even know what's happening. The first step is to understand, to take a moment, say, okay, how am I feeling in this situation? What's going on for me? And to be really honest. And you may need to literally walk out of the situation for a while. You may need to go for a walk. You may need to decide, I'm not even going to talk about this tonight. It's too raw. I'm not ready to find my draft. And maybe you want to go and do some journaling. Maybe you want to go and do your meditation practice, your breathing practice. Maybe you want to call a friend and talk about it to somebody else before you talk to the person. So ideally, in learning nonviolent communication, we form these communities that we call practice groups. And in the practice groups, we have an empathy buddy system. It's like the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. So if you're part of a group like that, you have an empathy buddy. So you call them and you say, guess what? I'm so angry at my son, I can't find my draft. And they give you the support. They give you empathy. They give you draft. In order to be draft, you need draft first, perhaps. In order to find your compassion, you need to be held with compassion. So it's a beautiful model. And of course, it takes practice, right? It takes practice. It's like a muscle. We don't always get it right. It's better to try than not to try, but I can tell you that in my experience, it does develop. But I think we do need a lot of support. So ideally, we need a community of drafts. That's why I would love to do something beyond this reunion, because we can support each other. Marshall used to say, you need a lot of draft juice to make a difference in this world. But in order to make a difference in this world, you have to fill up your own tank. We need to be inspired. We need to be supported. We need to learn. We need to practice. We need to get stronger. So it's very understandable. Gabby.
Yeah, like I think with the same idea. What if you have a relationship that has been so long as parents, for example, where there are certain triggers that come over and over and over? My mom always keeps telling me, every time I say whatever topic, she says, yes, I know you think I'm the worst mother in the world. Something I've never said, I've never thought. Of course, she's not, she's a good mother, but she has a lot of things that I would never think she's the worst in the world. But it comes out of any topic. Now we have nephews, so we have a totally different conversation that we didn't have before because we didn't have kids in the family. So if I bring a fact about the kids, well, these happened today, and probably as adults, we could try to do these like for the kids and stuff. And then she would bring the same thing. And I know my jackal shows in my eyes, shows in my tone, even though I'm saying a fact, it comes. But right to my question is, how can we change things when we always trigger like history and certain kind of reactions? I don't know, because that's my greatest challenge.
Absolutely. And the fact is, the closest relationships, right, are the hardest because they're so important to us. They're more likely. So sometimes it's easier to practice with your neighbor. It's easy to, and again, sometimes at the beginning, you need to choose your battles, right? Don't be caught in the jaw of the jackal too fast, and we don't have to resolve all conflict all at once. You need to take it step by step. And it's the practice, it's the growth. And this it can't be just a weekend workshop. It's not that simple. It's something that I need to dedicate myself. And again, ideally, I create a support system. I keep practicing it, and it goes deeper and deeper. And I do believe it's possible. It is possible to go to that deeper place. I'll tell you one little example that's, that represents the kind of challenge that you're mentioning. So it was a guy who would, visit family during Christmas, and every Christmas it would turn into a big fight between he and his father. I mean, they love each other, but every Christmas it explodes at one point. And the dynamic was the father finds some reason to criticize about the guy. The guy is very successful businessman, and the father finds some way of indicating that he's not good enough, and then he fights back, and the whole Christmas is destroyed. So again, it's a very engraved dynamic. But this guy was learning in VC, so he was practicing, he got a lot of support. So one thing we do in these groups, we do a lot of role plays. Sometimes you really need to try it out, not in the heat of the moment, but outside of the moment. So he was doing all of that. So he had a lot of strategies, and he was like really feeling it in his body. So he was integrating. So goes to the Christmas and tells his father, business was the most successful I've had in my whole life. We quadrupled our profit. Everything is going so well. So he's giving the good news. What does the father say? Oh, but I'm sure you're not taking care of your accounting right. You should really get a good accountant, and you shouldn't, waste all that money. I'm sure you're not good at your accounting. You're just going to lose all your money, and you're really not careful with that. He's trying to share this success, and the father finds a reason to criticize, right? So again, it would be so tempting for him to say, why are you talking to me like this? You're not respecting me. You never listen to me. So he takes a deep breath, because he practiced this many times in his maybe support group, he role plays. And this is what he says to his father. He says to his father, Dad, are you saying that you really care about me? And are you really saying that you really want me to be very successful in life? Are you really wanting to contribute to my life? Do you really want me to benefit from your wisdom? Do you really want to play a role in my life and act a role where you can advise things and contribute to me? Are you really saying that you really care about me and you really want to be part of my life? Is that what you're saying, Dad? And he says, that's the first Christmas ever where they didn't have the fight. Because the father was in heaven, right? The father says, yes, I love you. I care about you. I'll do anything for you. So one little example of, of course it takes practice, but so you see, when you have an experience like that, your draft gets stronger. You say, well, I want to change the world. It's amazing, but we need those experiences and we need to try. Okay, so I'm going to suggest that we go to the next step, because I want to give you the bigger picture today. So the first step is the observation, right? You start by saying what the situation is. And that's the only place where you talk about the other person. You're saying, you did this. You said this to me. You did this behavior. So in some conflict resolution, there's a lot of emphasis on that. You talk about the situation, you analyze. In this model, we say that's like the least important part. You need to give it some context, but we say with the speed of lightning, move away from that stuff. Don't talk a lot about the other person. Why? Because you're putting the spotlight on them, right? Even if you're not judging them yet, they feel like any moment you're going to judge them. And it's uncomfortable, right? Nobody likes to be on. So you say you, but then the second step is, this is a very common communication skill. You're going to bring the language back to you. So you're going to start to use I language. You're going to really focus on talking about yourself. So the second step is, when the first step happens, I feel. So how do you feel in response to this situation? And it's literally saying, when you do this or when you don't do that, I feel. Mom, when you said that to me, I feel. When I see you without a mask right now, I feel. When I see what's happening, the Israeli government's certain decisions, I feel. So again, normally I would ask you to write down as many feeling words as you can. And be honest. Again, this is a step where you don't have to be nice. You include all of the complexity of your feelings, and the chances are you're not happy. You're not thrilled. You have one of these so-called negative emotions right now, and it's very understandable. It's very normal. It's very human. Of course, there's this pain. There's something going on inside of you. So just throw out some feeling words. What are some feelings that you can relate to in the middle of your situation? Just throw out the feeling words. either unmute or just write in the chat. Let's just hear some feeling words. Angry, exactly, angry. What else? Sad, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Maybe I feel lonely. Maybe I feel scared.
Belittled. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that, Monica.
Oh, belittled, you know.
Belittled. So thank you for that. I'll come back to that for a second. That's a certain category of feelings. When we say belittled, we'll come to that. Confused, disappointed.
Underestimated.
Underestimated, disrespected, overwhelmed, grief, despair, rage, right? Misunderstood, exactly. So is there anybody in this group who can say that you never under any condition feel anger? Raise your hand if you can say that under no condition I feel anger, I'm immune from anger. Anybody can say that? Is anybody can say that you never feel sad? Anybody can say you never feel scared? The point is, human emotions are universal. It must be part of life. I truly believe it's part of life, and I believe they're very healthy. They're very healthy. So there's nothing wrong with the emotions themselves. Of course, you're going to have emotions in this complex world with so many problems. There's nothing wrong with the emotions themselves, but the question is, how do you express it? I'm angry and you're the most horrible person. I'm angry and I'm going to hit you on the head. So it's about how we express the emotion. And again, there's a giraffe way to express your emotion and there's a jackal way. So one fine tuning here that I want to mention for a second is, a number of you said, words like, I feel misunderstood. I feel disrespected. I feel belittled. So in this model, we have a little warning saying that if you use your feeling in those words, it's like passive voice, you're kind of indicating somebody did something to you, it can still come across as a judgment. So for example, you're telling to your friend, I feel disrespected. Yesterday you said that to me, and I feel disrespected. Are you telling me I'm disrespectful? They get defensive again, right? So don't say anything that indicates that somebody did something to you. And definitely don't say anything that indicates that somebody did something. I mean, everybody knows disrespecting is bad. Belittling is horrible. So here's a little...
But what if they did?
I'm sorry?
But what if they did? What if they really made you feel disrespected? How can you not?
Yeah, here's my suggestion. Really, that's a really practical question, Annalisa. The technique for that is, let's say if I feel disrespected, I would say, ask yourself, how do I feel when I feel disrespected? Do I feel sad? Do I feel hurt? Do I feel devastated? Do I feel scared? So say the underbelly. I would say you're actually even more closer to truth, and you still get to be very honest, but you're not using a certain terminology that's going to ignite the jackal. So, the technique is go to the underbelly. It's more human. They can understand you more. To say, I feel disrespected is one thing, or to say, I felt really scared yesterday when you said that to me. It's something I would say it's even more powerful and it's closer to truth. So yes, again, we're not censoring the feelings, but we're being very mindful about, is this going to help the conversation or not? Is this a little bit more leaning towards giraffe or not? But all feelings are. Now, one thing I'm going to say is, it's really good to express our feelings. It's very healthy to express our feelings, but that may not be enough either. So I may say to Emilia, I haven't received a message from you in probably about 5 years. And you and I used to be really close at Pearson. And I want to let you know, I feel really sad about that. I'm really hurt. I'm hurt. I'm okay, I'm expressing my feeling, but again, these sense that blaming energy, these sense that jackal inside of there. So again, that's not helpful. That's not helpful. Just to say my feeling again by blame, or a month later, I ran into Emilia again. I'm like this, kind of like I'm stuck in the feeling. So that's not very helpful. Another example I like to give is like maybe a dear friend comes to you and says, I'm not feeling so good these days. I really want to share with you how I'm feeling. I'm really depressed. I mean, this is good that this person is sharing their feelings with you. I think this is excellent. It's a really good step. But do you see how they're also still fairly stuck in the feeling? So ideally, we need a next step. It's really helpful to say the feeling, but we don't want to stop there either. And even just saying the feeling can cause more disconnection. But the feeling, I would say, is very important. But the next step, the third step, is the most important step in this model. If there's one thing that you get today, I would love you to get this. So what is the third step? So Emilia, if you can help me out with this, we can do a little kind of a fun thing. So let's say Emilia and I were really good friends. And I don't know, we're in the same country, we're spending time. And I'm at a party with you guys and a real reunion. Let's say we're at the reunion on campus. Imagine that we could be on campus. Yeah. And Emilia is my good friend. And I'm in a room with some of you guys, we're hanging out. And Emilia comes into the room that I'm in. And Emilia ignores me. Doesn't say hello, doesn't acknowledge me, doesn't come and talk to me. How could I feel in that moment when somebody is, a really dear person is, what could I be feeling in that moment? I may feel hurt. I may be like, oh, she doesn't care about me. Maybe I may feel sad. I may be offended. Right? I'm like, I told you we're good friends. You see me at the reunion and you don't want to talk with me? And what kind of a friend? Like, bring up my anger and even my jackal, right? So it's easy to imagine that I may go into a kind of a negative feeling in response to she ignoring me. Okay, now I'm gonna change the scenario just a tiny little bit. Same setup. I'm in the room hanging out with you guys, the lovely friends from Pearson. And she comes into the room, she ignores me. But let's say as she comes into the room, I happen to be talking to Debbie that I miss so much, that I'm really wanting to catch up. And we're in the middle of a very personal moment. Very, sensitive, personal moment. We're really connecting. And it's really important to me. So Emilia comes in and ignores me. Guess how I feel? I feel glad. I may think, thank God, she's not coming to me right now. I may feel grateful. I may be thinking in my head, what a sensitive person Emilia is. What a kind, what a compassionate person. I may even go and thank her and say, Emilia, thank you so much for not coming in that moment. You're amazing. You're the best ever. So isn't that strange? Because her behavior is exactly the same. She's just ignoring me and I have these completely opposite feelings inside of me. So why do I have two very opposite feelings in these two very similar scenarios? How would you explain that? What's the difference between these two things that creates these feelings inside of me?
Your state.
Something is different about my state, right? But what determined even my state? Why am I in a different state? How did that happen?
Is it the story you tell yourself about what the situation is about?
Absolutely, and that's a huge dimension with all of these topics. It's what we're seeing, the stories, the narrative. But what's determining the story? Why do I have a different story? Because why, right? Why wasn't I happy the first time? Why did I come up with a very negative interpretation, negative story? So how could you? What's the concept? So the concept that we use in this model is what I'm needing in that moment. What is my need in that moment? Concept is my need in the moment. So the first case scenario, I'm having fun. Emilia comes into the room. I'm happy to see Emilia. In that moment, I have a need for connection with Emilia. I want some acknowledgement. I want some love. I want some, warmth. If Emilia doesn't give that to me, my needs are not met. And I'm going, what? What kind of a friend is she? In that moment, my needs that are most alive are not being met. And then I may judge her. I may create a story. She's so standoffish. She's never really cared about me, simply because my needs are not being met. And I have some negative feelings attached to that. In the second case, my most important need is not to immediately connect. I mean, I love Emilia, I want to connect her, but not right in that moment. Guess what my most important need is? My most important need is to be left alone, for God's sake. Leave me alone. I need privacy. I need respect. I need boundaries. Please see that I'm busy. Please see that I'm in the middle of something. You know, I have a need for consideration. I have a need for sensitivity. So she ignores me. She meets my needs. And I'm so happy with her. I can tell her you're the. So the concept is underneath our feelings are needs. Every feeling is attached to a need. And this is, you know, I mean, it may sound like a very simple concept, but to me, it's life-changing. Feelings don't exist alone. Sometimes I say, like, there's a smell in the room. There's this beautiful rose smell. Where is it coming from? Is it coming from the desk? Is it coming from the TV? Where is it? It's coming from that beautiful flower that's sitting over there, right? But we rarely ask that about our feelings. It's so common to say, well, I feel upset because you ignored me. You caused me to be upset. You're upsetting me. My feeling is directly attached to you. In this model, we say, no, 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 it's a little bit more complex than that. My feeling is attached to my needs. Your behavior is a stimulus, but how I'm going to feel about it will be dependent on what happened to my needing. If I'm needing connection, if you ignore me, I'll be upset. If I'm needing privacy, I'll be very happy that you're ignoring. So the concept is we need to go deeper than feelings to our needs. And this is where we have a lot of hope for conflict resolution. So in this model, you know, you can call this whole model, it's a language of needs. It's an invitation to let's talk about needs. Let's focus on needs. Let's understand what the needs are. Let's really value needs. Let's really prioritize needs. So think about your situation. What are your needs in that situation? Are you needing respect? Are you needing understanding? Are you needing safety when you see somebody without a mask on? Are you needing support? Are you needing love? So just think about the whole list of human needs. Are you needing freedom? Are you needing to be heard? Are you needing power? Do you have a need for power? Do you have a need for choice? Decide your own life. Need for belonging, so most important, right? Need for connection. Need to be seen, need to matter. One of the biggest needs, I believe, for human beings is a need to contribute. It's not just about our selfish lives, right? We have such a deep need to contribute. We want, you know, this is true for us. We're that, you know, again, this is our life trajectory. We came to Pearson, we're involved with life, we have a need. So Marshall would ask people from all around the world when he traveled, he would say, in the last 24 hours, what was the happiest moment that you had? He would do this kind of like a little survey, you know, what made you the happiest? And he says 99% of the time, it was a moment where somebody did something for somebody else. They contributed to a person, to a project. So this is good news because this is in our human nature. We love to contribute. And that's, I think, the hope for humanity is we take such deep pleasure in contributing, in caring, and being kind. But of course, we have our own personal needs as well. Of course, I need to be safe. Of course, I need to have some basic respect. Of course, I need freedom. You know, how can I operate if I don't have basic freedom? Autonomy, so important, right? So again, is there anybody, you know, here that can say, you know, I don't have a need for respect? Raise your hand if you can say, I don't have a need for respect. I'm fine. I don't have a need for belonging. Or I don't have a need for support. I can do it on my own. I'll be okay. It's not possible. So again, the amazing concept here is that all human beings have the same needs and it's universal. Human needs are universal. So the person you're upset with have the same exact needs as you. The person on the other side of the conflict have the same exact needs as you. And that's where we start to get into more hope of resolution and mutual understanding. Okay, so that's the third step, where you express your needs. The fourth step is you say what you want. What is your request? So Emilia was mentioning this a little while ago. So as a jackal, maybe you would be demanding. But as a draft, we don't demand, we make a request. And the request would sound like, would you be willing to put on a mask right now? Would you be willing to, return the money that you owe me? Would you be willing to not ask this question of me? Would you be willing to ask that question in a slightly different way? What is it that you want from this person or from this country, from this group, this organization that you're trying to, have a change with? So that's the fourth step, is a request. So I'm going to ask again one volunteer just to say what your request is. And maybe actually, let me do it with Emilia first. Emilia, would you be willing to do a request? And then I'll do a role play with you about that. Well, about your situation or a world issue, what would be a request that you may want to make?
Could I have a hug, please?
Oh, I love that. That's a very draft request, by the way. That's a very draft request. Ask me something a little bit more difficult. Ask for like a change in position, political position, or you really want your mom to behave differently or something like that.
Alper, before I can work with you and sit in the desk next to you, I really need to know that you've got the vaccine. That you've got the vaccine.
Can you hear the awkward silence right now? Really awkward silence. Oops. Oops. Right? So one response maybe the other person doesn't even respond to. Right? That's not very helpful because your communication is not going to go. Maybe I'm embarrassed to. Maybe I'm afraid you're going to judge me. Maybe I don't feel safe to be honest with you. Maybe I feel like you're just going to nail me down if I really tell you what my truth is, right? And then, so she's trying to communicate, she made a request, but it can easily stop. I'll give you another example. An example may be, Emilia, I've been really missing you. I have a need for connection. I have a need for love and support in my life. So would you be willing to call me 5 times a week and each time talk at least 2.5 hours? So one tip about requests is be as specific as you want. Right? It's actually very helpful. Be very specific. What do you really want? Don't say, I want you to call me more. And she may say yes, but her definition of calling more may be once a year. No, I want it 5 times a week and I want it 2.5 hours each call. Ask for what you want. For example, a very common problem in relationships would be, I want you to respect me more, but I do. No, you don't, but I do. No, you don't. Have you ever heard of conversations like that? I would say the problem is the request is too vague. You got to be more specific. Don't say, I want you to respect me more. Don't say, I want you to listen to more. Say, would you be willing right now to sit down with me? Would you be willing to turn off the TV? Would you be willing to turn off your cell phone?
How to have difficult conversations.
Would you be willing to, make eye contact? Oops, sorry. Mute.
I'm so confused. Why?
And would you be willing to make eye contact with me? And would you be willing to not say anything for a minimum of 15 minutes and just stay there? You see, that's very specific. Maybe that's what you need to feel like. And here's the beautiful thing. If you make such a specific request, the other person is either going to say, oh, yes, I would love to do that for you. Or they're going to say, for example, if I said to Emilia, this is my request. I want you to call me 5 times a week and at least 2.5 hours. Now, Emilia, be really rude back. Just don't worry about hurting my feelings. Be very jackal back. What could you say that's really hurtful?
Fucking kidding me. I'm a single mom. I've got 2 kids. What are you, my 3rd kid?
I love it. I like the last part. Right. Do you think I love you that much? Do you think you're that important to me? So if you're a draft, you're willing to hear the other person's honesty. So it's not a demand, right? So I didn't say you better do what I want you to do, otherwise I'm gonna, punish you. So if you want to be a draft, the test of your draftness is, are you willing to hear and know? And are you even willing to hear this very negative response? Because in reality, especially in difficult situations, you may get a very negative jackal kind of a lashback. That's reality. And as a draft, you need to know how to deal with it. But here's the fun part. let's say if my draft isn't strong enough yet, and I made a wonderful request, and Emilia responded maybe not so nicely. And what if I have these ears? What are these ears? These are jackal ears. So I was trying to talk in giraffe, but because her answer is so difficult, I'm triggered now back into my jackal, and I hear her response to me through my jackal ears now. So how am I going to respond back if I hear her no to me through my jackal ears? So I'm going to say something like that. You know, I'm trying to talk to you in compassionate communication, but you're such an idiot. You don't even understand from compassion. And what kind of a friend are you? And, you know, you're the most horrible person I've ever met in my life. And shame on you. Like, what just happened? Right? You know, all my draft effort went just down the drain simply because I heard her message back to me through these jackal ears, and it really triggered me again. And I went back to the jackal realm. And it's very unfortunate because, you know, all the effort that I was making is lost. I actually cause more damage now, more harm. So that's one possibility, to hear a difficult message through the draft ears. The other option would be, so she says her answer to me, but I have the jackal ears faced inward. What do you think that would mean if I have the jackal ears faced inwards? So what this means in this model is, it's going to go something like that. So she said, you know, do you think you're my kid? You know, do you think I love you that much? Maybe I don't even say anything, but here's my internal dialogue. You know, she's not the first person who said this about me, and nobody cares about me. I guess I'm just a loser. I guess I'm just, you know, I don't deserve love in my life. You know, I don't have what it takes to be loved. I don't belong to this world. I'm an idiot. I'm too needy. I'm just a crybaby. I'm being too needy here. So do you see what I'm doing right now? I'm taking the message, I'm internalizing it, and I'm not jackaling myself. Now we have a little glimpse into, you know, how this, you know, plays in our inner dialogue, right? And how am I going to feel if I start to jackal myself? Welcome to the land of depression and despair. I'm not very happy. So Marshall used to say, if you're ever angry or depressed, he would say, check your ears. He'd say, check your ears. He says, I guarantee you, you're going to find these ears, either facing outside or inside. So this is where we slip back into the jackal, and it's clearly not helpful. But the solution is, so there's this very high advanced technology that can solve the world's problems. This is very advanced piece of technology. What are these? Giraffe ears. So this is what we need when things are complex, right? In real life, of course, they're going to be complex. Of course, just because you're trying to solve giraffe, it may not work the first time around, but it doesn't matter what the other person is going to do as long as you have giraffe ears on. Because giraffe ears on means you're going to hold on to your giraffe. You're not going to be triggered back into your jackal. So Emilia, say your difficult answer back to me, and I'll try to respond to you. Like, would you be willing to call me 5 times a week and at least 2.5 hours a time?
Alper, you're really not that important to me. I've got 2 kids. I'm not taking on any more burdens. This is the circle around my family, and you're on the outside. I don't have that time for you.
Oh, I feel that. So for a moment, I feel the pain. And for a moment, my ears are falling off, you know? Like, it's so tempting to go back to jackal. So I need to put my giraffe ears back on and hold them tight and make sure I have the right ears. And maybe I need to take a deep breath, and maybe I need to take a break. Sometimes maybe I can't respond right away. Maybe I say, Emilia, can I call you back? I'm having a heart attack. I need to go to the urethra, whatever it takes. Or, you know, if I'm practiced enough, I put my giraffe ears on, I take a deep breath, and I'm clear about my intention. No matter what, I'm going to stay with giraffe. I respond like this to Emilia. So Emilia, when you just heard my wonderful request, are you feeling stressed out? Are you needing some understanding that you have needs too? Are you really needing a more practical solution where your practical needs can be honored? Do you really want to know that you matter to me, that I would consider your situation? Would you be wanting to find a more doable solution, perhaps? Am I hearing you right now, Amelia?
Oh, yes, Alper, I'd really love it if you understood, you know, the pressure, the strain, the tension, the need for a line around my family and the tight distribution of my resources. And if you understood that, I'd give you half an hour a week.
I'm just so hearing about how stressful it is to deal with kids, and I don't even have kids. I can only try to imagine how difficult it must be. And I'm also hearing that you're not really saying no to me. You're really concerned about the amount of time. And
I just have to guard that line
yeah,
around my family. There's a limit that I can give outside of my line.
I really hear you need some boundaries. You really need to respect yourself. You really need to protect your family. You know, you really need to be a mama bear sometimes. I'm really hearing that. And thank you for letting me know. I really hear that.
Well, if you could support me on that, then you'd be right on the inside.
You know, I'm so touched that you say that. And I'm so touched that we're having this conversation. I care about you. And yeah, I would be delighted to do a half an hour call with you. Would that work for you?
Yeah.
So, isn't that amazing? A conversation that could so easily sidetrack and go into disaster with a little bit of my draft skills, with a little bit of me. So what did I just do? I switched gears, right? I switched to listening. So communication is two parts. Either you're going to express yourself, and then you really need to be willing to switch and also just hear the message that I'm giving. I was very clear about my needs, but now I'm giving the message, but I care about your needs too. And I want to understand. And I'm not even going to assume that I know what your needs are. I don't even know your life situation. And thank you for letting me know. So I'm giving this message that I care about you. I'm not trying to bulldoze over you, you know, and I'm giving this message that I want to have a win-win solution here. And I'm not shaming her. I'm not punishing her. I'm just really showing her that this wasn't a demand. I'm showing her that I really mean to be a draft. So one way to summarize a lot of what we talked about today, compassionate, you know, or if you want to say, what's the goal of compassionate communication? The goal of compassionate communication is to create a quality of connection. It's not about getting what I want. It's about creating a quality connection in which everybody's needs can be met naturally. It's not about getting what I want. It's about I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to connect. I'm trying to create a relationship. I'm trying to create that trust. I'm trying to create that goodwill. I'm not jumping too quickly to strategies. I'm not even negotiating. I'm not even trying to compromise. I'm just wanting to listen, understand until we feel like, wow, there's a sense of caring. There's a sense of we're starting to connect. So I'll just show you the last option with the draft here. So the other option is, which is an amazing technology, is for you to have the draft ears faced inwards. Right? Just like the jackal ears, you can keep your draft ears, well, yeah, draft ears inwards. So what does this mean? This means that you're going to give draft to yourself. You're going to take a moment and you're going to empathize with yourself. That's a concept. And sometimes that's what we need when we're really upset, when we're really triggered, when we're losing our draft. You really need to take a moment and you need to say, I really want to kill this person. I don't think this person should be given human rights. And then I need to ask myself, what am I feeling right now? What's going on for me? I'm feeling devastated. I'm feeling so angry. I'm feeling hopeless. I'm feeling helpless. Okay, what am I needing right now? I'm just needing safety. I just want some common ground. I just want some communication. I just want some understanding. Do you see how I'm bringing myself back to giraffe? I'm not trying to give the giraffe to the other person right now because I don't have the energy to do that, but I'm processing my experience with the giraffe structure, which helps me to come back to giraffe. And it also really helps me to understand myself and to be really aware. And then maybe I'm ready to come back to the conversation and say, hey, you know what? I'm feeling really scared. You know what? I want to try to understand you for a moment. Would you be willing to tell me why you don't want to wear a mask? Maybe we need to talk about this. So this is the option with the draft ears where we turn the attention towards ourselves and we give self-empathy. So this is the model. It's a lot to cover. It's pretty complex, but I'm going to take any last questions you may have. And also, if somebody is willing to take a group picture, I don't even know how to do that from my screenshot, so it'd be so nice to capture.
I can do that.
Jaylene, thank you. So just let us know when you're going to do that so we can all maybe pose for you. Maybe I'll grab my draft and my ears.
Hey,
Oh,
everybody.
maybe the others that have their cameras off can temporarily turn them
Challenge
on.
that. Are we going to get you? Okay, I am about to do this. Everybody ready?
Okay, guys, think draft and just radiate your draft to the world. Imagine dealing with conflicts and people, one conversation at a time, as much as possible. Just
Here we
imagine.
go.
Try.
Should I do another one?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Now be the jackal. No, just kidding.
So any comments, any questions? And also, again, I have desire that if people are interested to maybe even have an ongoing little group that may want to meet more regularly, I would be happy to kind of teach this more. I mean,
I would love that.
I would love
really
to have like a
that.
practice group where we can come
Yes.
together, learn this, practice, do role plays, and have
Yeah.
an opportunity to share about our lives, how we're doing, because that's what it takes. It takes a support system. So if you're interested, let's definitely connect. And
Yes. It would be nice to connect again anyways, in any way, Alper.
Yeah.
But I am very interested. So that would be
I
great.
would love that. I mean, I was visiting Pearson years ago and I did a little talk for the students and it was so lovely. And we talked at that time, we should do this more for Pearson. I would love to, I'm close by. So yeah, so this is something that I would love to, give a lot of energy to. So if anybody wants to be part of it, just let me know. We'll put it on all the different channels. We'll put it on Facebook. I'll put it on WhatsApp. Be in touch with me and let's do it.
It could be called How to Be a Good Roommate 101.
Exactly.
And I'd be curious to know how you might adapt this for kids.
It's being used all around the world. So there's parenting groups. So there's lovely resources that I put on Facebook. We'll put on all the other mediums as well. So Center for Nonviolent Communication is the international organization, and they use it in education. They have schools in Israel and Palestine that's based on these ideas. They use in Africa between warring tribes. It's used on so many different levels. So check it out, and we can create something for UWC. Why not? I mean, isn't this so relevant to what we do? I wish I personally would have loved to have these skills while I was at Pearson. I would have loved to have a practice group where I could have gone and get empathy. I would have loved to be able to, to try my communication skills while I'm there and to have a little bit of guidance, a bit of a map. So, one thing that I noticed in some of the sessions throughout the reunion is, we're so happy to see each other. It's amazing. So there's a lot of positive feeling, but also I've heard from a number of people also it brings up difficult feelings. And also Pearson wasn't always wonderful. There was such difficult experiences and emotions. This is my passion, like how do we create a culture where we can talk about all of our feelings and know how to do it, know how to support each, and this is a peer support system. So wouldn't it be amazing if Pearson students were trained in this and they would have empathy buddies that they can pair up with and they can actually support one another and they know how to do it. Like I can go to somebody and say, Hussein, I need your help, I need you to hear me out, but they know exactly what to do. They're not gonna criticize you. They're not gonna give you advice. They're just gonna know how to just give you empathy and be present with you.
Absolutely. Just want to say thanks, Alper, for hosting this session. And I learned a lot. I loved your props. I have some great pictures of you with your tech ears on, so I'll be sending those to you.
I would love that. Thank you so much.
And I just want to say that, if there's any follow-up sessions you hold after in Discord or WhatsApp or wherever, I'd love to join. We all have
Oh, I think we just lost you, Kirti. You guys just got frozen.
These in different areas, mental health profession. Yeah, we don't really have these skills, and I didn't have it at Pearson, and I can't say I have them now. I'm just still working on it, and I think there's a lot to learn, and I really appreciate this session. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so touched to hear that, Kirti. And I'm still learning and I need to practice. I would love to practice with you guys. When I first met Marshall, I was still really lost. I didn't know what to study next in my life. So I was telling him, I'm so lost. I'm so depressed. And he said, why don't you teach this? And I said, I can't. I'm not good enough. I'm not ready enough. I'm too wounded, you know? And he said, well, if you really want to learn this, the best way to do it is to teach it.
Mm.
So I'm learning by sharing this.
I want to say thank you to Amelia and who else was our sharer today? Gabby, just for being so vulnerable. And that was just really helpful to have those examples from you.
Thank you so much for saying that. And thank you for your questions. I know this is very complex and it's very natural to have all these questions and there's a way to address them, but we need a lot of time and we need to go deeply. And, you know, sometimes we need to have the basics first and then, you know, we deal with the more complicated situation. And there's a lot of nuances. And again, I want to emphasize this is not the only way. There's so many effective strategies, but this is some really powerful tools for sure.
Hi, Alper.
Hi.
Thank you so much. This is Jaime. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much. Where are you?
I'm in Chicago right now. Hey, listening to you and listening to our college peers, and I was thinking about silencing what is essential for us. Most of the time, we silence things that are essential, like in our emotions, right? Like our capacity the capacity that we have to confront difficult situations. That made me think about that. And I think the invitation that I got from you is like, don't silence what is essential. Emotions, confrontation, that's essential for human beings. That's essential for me. That's essential for everyone. The other piece that I would love to share is prudence. Be prudent and patient. I think when confronting, I grew up in a very revolutionary, confrontational society, and confrontation is part of our nature. Nicaraguans are very confrontative, and
that's right.
I've learned to be prudent, and I've learned to be patient when approaching difficult situations and difficult issues. So everything, and thank you for this conversation.
Oh, thank you so much for saying all of that. You know, it just reminded me something really funny Marshall used to say. So when he was first starting to try to apply this to his life, his son was complaining, and one day his son was saying, Dad, you're taking too long and you're talking like a robot. You know, why are you taking so long? And why do you sound like, you know, like you're a psychologist? And Marshall said, well, you know, let me tell you what I can say really fast. You know, do it my way or I'll kick your ass. He says, would you like to hear that or would you like me to take my time? And his son says, Dad, take your time. Please take your time. So it takes patience and it's not perfect, but other people are ultimately happy for it, for sure. For sure. And it's not supposed to be perfect. It's messy, but, you know, yes, I do think it's so meaningful and so worth it. So yeah, so some of the videos that I'm sharing are very inspiring. So I would highly recommend the videos. I'll even put some links. There's lots of great stuff on YouTube. And I would highly recommend that you watch Marshall directly because he traveled all around the world and he tackled some of the most difficult conflicts. And he had some incredible moments of human connection. So for example, I'll just share one last thing. He was in Palestine at a refugee camp, and he was there to teach nonviolent communication. So just before he starts to speak, there's this rumor in the crowd, and people are whispering, he's an American, he's an American, he's an American. And, you know, they're not very fond of Americans there. So right away, people start screaming at him, you murderer, you assassin, you don't care about our people, your government is evil. And, you know, can you imagine? You know, he's there to try to help, and this whole crowd is getting violent with him. And he says he wanted to defend himself. He wanted to fight back. He says, okay, I need to use my skills. So he started to talk like this. He said to this guy who was screaming and saying, are you feeling really angry right now? Are you feeling really upset about what government is doing in this situation? Yes, you know, you're selling bombs, you're selling weapons. So are you feeling really concerned, and do you really want to have safety? Do you really want the world to understand what's really going on? Yes, you have no clue what's happening here. My children are playing in sewage. How would you feel if your child was playing in sewage? You must be devastated to see your kids living in these conditions. It must be the most difficult thing. And this apparently went for 20 minutes. The guy screaming and Marshall just doing his best to hear, just to listen, not to argue, not to be defensive, just be a human being, just keep listening. And he says at the end of that conversation, not only the guy calmed down, not only the whole group calmed down, they had an amazing session that day. They actually trusted Marshall finally. But he says at the end of that session, it was Ramadan, and the guy who was screaming at him first comes and invites him for Ramadan dinner at his family home. So, you know, it's possible. It's not easy, but it's possible to connect across differences. And I think that's what we all want. Okay, so we're already past our time. Is there a session right now? Is there another session?
Yes, there's another session. Just quickly, do you think you can summarize the 4 steps real quick?
Yes, and so yes, I will also include some handouts. So I'm going to give you guys a Dropbox link. So there's a lot of handouts there, so you'll have this. And I even have the whole book, the Nonviolent Communication book, and the workbook as a PDF. So that's just for you guys. I felt like it's okay to share with you. If you like it, I don't know, do a donation to the organization, but I'm giving you the whole book. So the 4 steps are observation. Second step is feeling. Third step is need, which is the most important. And the 4th step is request. What is your request? And the 2 modes of communication, either you're going to be speaking, you're expressing what's alive in you, what are your feelings and needs and what do you want, or you switch gears and you listen, you empathize. And empathy is again based on feelings and needs. You try to guess, are you feeling because you're needing? So that's the formula that we recommend, just to say, are you feeling upset because you're needing understanding right now? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Alper.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you, Alper. Thank you.
Very, very, very meaningful for me. I'm so touched. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So what is happening right now? Is there a session?
So actually, it's a really good segue, and I'm so glad that this session was scheduled directly before, because the next session is actually about social media and toxic conversation and what our obligations are or not, and what are, you know, how do we deal with situations where we disagree with people online and where they disagree with us, and should we make space for that, or should we shut it down, or how do we as, you know, rational humans try to deal with people who are